Okay, question is, what creative risk am I willing to take? Oh, that is a really good question. Okay, so what is actually the creative risk? Alright, yeah. Um, okay, so like basically is this thing that ki I want to take a photo. Okay, I wanted to take a photo with a guy who is actually in the air. Okay, yeah, and he was holding the entire car, like basically just like he was kind of like a something like just like a Magneto. Okay, yeah, but he was in the air. Car is also in the air. Okay, yeah, and he was kind of like a somebody pointed hand towards the car, and basically this thing it kind of like connected with the cable wire and everything. I have to take the photo. Okay, yeah. So this is the kind of like a something really a creative photo, but it comes with a risk. Okay, yeah. What is the risk? This means like that obviously everything is kind of like a something in a proper control way, like basically car and person and everything is actually tied up with the cables and everything. So probably they won't be able to fall. Okay. As also is this thing, I put the mattresses on the kind of like a something on the floor. So basically if something happened, then they would fall on the mattresses. Okay, yeah. All right. So basically, this thing, I wanted to take a photo. It's a creative photo, but it really required a risk. And what is the risk? A risk of death. Okay, yeah. Because of that, he was not in the just air. Like basically, I'm thinking about that. He was actually above ground after almost like a 20 feet or 40 or 50 feet, 50 feet above the ground. Okay, yeah. So it is kind of like a something very like risky. Okay, like basically above 50 feet it might be a wind, it might be a air, it might be something lot of thing. Okay, yeah. And basically if you could have fell off from the 50 feet above the ground, then probably like you will not gonna die, but it just like you might gonna hurt. All right, yeah. So it really required kind of like a something a risk. Okay, yeah. So the question is that ki, are you willing to take that risk, like for that creative thing? Like you have that idea, okay, yeah. You haven't really take the photo till this now, but you have this idea, okay, yeah. It really required kind of like a risk. It's a very creative, but it's a risk. So would you able to do this thing? Um, basically, is this thing. If I want to do this thing or not, it kind of like a something depend on various factor. First of all, is that key money, yeah. Do I have money for everything, like basically for the safety and everything? All right, yeah, like a cranes and cables and mattresses and everything like a and the support group. Okay, yeah. Do I have that kind of like a something money so that I could pay those services and the people? Okay, if I have that, so this is the one solution. Okay, but they have multiple problems too. Okay, yeah. Another thing is that ki, I have to find the car. Okay, also car, finding a car is not really that much difficult. Okay, yeah. Finding a person, okay, who willing to take that thing, because like basically in the end that person is kind of like a something in the mid air. Okay, yeah. So probably I need a kind of like a something person who is kind of like a bit really like a action person. What's action person? Like a stunt man. Okay, yeah, stunt man who kind of like a do such a thing, like he has that kind of like something experience about that stuff. Okay, yeah. So I have to hire a stunt person, then I have to kind of like a something hire a bunch of people who has a kind of like a something safety and do those things. Okay, yeah. And I have to find the car. Okay, yeah. And for that thing I really require kind of like a something money. Do I have that? Yeah. Okay, these are all those things, and if I have that money and everything, then probably I will take the shot and I will take that kind of like a something creative risk, because I have that resources. All right, yeah. So basically this thing, it's a kind of like a something very easy way so that you could understand what is that the creative risk. Okay, yeah. But there are lots of creative risk that you haven't renewed. Okay, yeah. What is exactly the creative risk? Okay, yeah. So um it's a like I'm gonna tell you something really one of the classic example which is actually happened in the real life. Okay, yeah. um but should I include this thing in a creative? It's not a creative, it's okay, yeah. It's a risk, by the way, yeah. But okay, what is at least this thing? Like I'm actually thinking, I'm actually processing that key. Is it kind of like a risk or is it kind of like a creative? Yeah, it involved kind of like a risk. Just get to the point. All right, yeah. 1969, human is actually landed on the moon. Is another planet. Okay, landed on the moon. Um, so basically, it kind of like this date is printed on the human history that human is actually step a foot on the moon. Okay, yeah. It's a very risk mission. Okay, yeah. Because of that, ki you are actually sending couple of people from the Earth to the another planet, not another planet, moon, to the moon. Okay, yeah, and basically it covered with the distance, and basically the mission is the thing that kind of like a something, but it's not easy. Okay, yeah. Let me tell you one thing: the distance between Earth and Moon is that ki you could put every solar system planet like a Jupiter, Mars, every planet you could put on the Earth and Moon. It has that much distance. Okay, yeah. So basically, this thing it's a very risky thing. As also is this thing that ki it's another planet, so probably it kind of like a something very different thing. Atmosphere might be different, everything would be different, and it really required kind of like a lot of information regarding about that. Ki how do we supposed to execute this operation? Okay, yeah. So NASA did this thing. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing before 1969. It's been almost like a 4 10 year. Okay, yeah. They are kind of like somebody executing this project. Apollo 11, 12, 13, 14. Sometimes some missions fail, sometimes some missions successful. But they kind of like something got information about that. Ki how do we supposed to do this thing? And they did it at 1961. Human is actually landed on the moon. Okay, yeah. Is it risk? It's a risk. It's a very risk. Like basically is this thing, if the one person would die or if the one astronaut would be kind of like a simply catastrophic death, then probably like it will be a lot of allegation to the government because it's actually happened through the US government. So basically it kind of like a something, it's a very risk. Okay, yeah. And it kind of like a something very global news too. Okay, yeah. So basically it's a very difficult. You get it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So they did it. They kind of like put everything, efforts and everything, and they did it. So it's a very risk. Okay. Yeah. Is it creative? Okay. Because it's a risk. That is for sure. Is it creative? Well, probably is a thing that key. Yeah, it is somewhat creative, but I'm not gonna count as a creative thing. Okay. Yeah. As I mentioned previous example, I wanted to take the photo of the guy who is actually mid-air with the car, and he was pointed hand towards the car. So basically, I wanted to take the photo. So this is the process. It's kind of like a something creative thing. Okay, like basically, I would imagine that, and I create that in real life. Okay, yeah. But landed on the moon, it it really required more than creativity because like basically, I would think that yeah, I wanted to go to the moon, but like basically it's not gonna happen with just the money. Okay, because in the previous example I only need a money, that's it. Okay, then rest of the thing is kind of like something manageable. But going to the moon, it not only required just a money, it really required information, lot of resources, people, expertise, everything, dude. Okay, yeah, time. It is like really like a really like it really required. And basically let me tell you one thing, how much money they need. Like like I don't know like the estimate budget for the Apollo, entire the Apollo mission. Okay, yeah, like what's Apollo mission? Like basically they landed on the moon, it's called Apollo mission. Okay, and they have Apollo 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I don't know, they have like lots of Apollo missions. Okay, during each Apollo mission they have kind of like a study about the space, study about the astronaut suit, their chamber, how it looks like basically, and how the kind of like some the satellite would be landed on this thing, how they kind of like a take off from over there. It's a lot of thing. Okay, they actually tested everything, and basically every month they are kind of like a launching every satellite to to understand how do we supposed to execute that particular thing. Okay, yeah. So basically this thing, it really required money, people, not only just the people who are actually expertise in space and everything. Okay, yeah. then basically the person who willing to do this thing, as also assisting the person uh, who could, like it, I don't know, like basically just like you could imagine that if I wanted to land on the moon surface, so what kind of like a stuff you need, whatever the resources that you have, you could use that thing. Okay, so it's a far more bigger than the money. Okay, yeah. And let me tell you one thing, these are actually happened in 1969. So the preparation was actually happened in the 1960 or 1955. So in this 1955, at that time they didn't really have any internet. They don't really have any kind of like a something like the mobile phone and stuff like that. They have might be television or something, but probably is this saying the technology that we have at this moment, at this time, at the 1955 or 1960, things are might be so much difficult over there, but they did it. They did it. Okay, yeah. It's not because just to have a creativity or curiosity. No, it's about that key something really geopolitic thing. Okay, because at this time there is a cold war between the US and Russia. So basically it's this thing they want to be said that key whose country is kind of like a something super more powerful, and the only way they could do that is kind of like a simply stepping the human on the moon. Okay, yeah. So yeah, it has something really another story. So yeah, do you really understand na? So these are some sort of risk. Okay, yeah. So do you completely understand the gravity of the creative risk? Okay, yeah. Like a creative risk is actually happening everywhere. Like in the movie, every stunt is actually happened because of the like a kind of like a, some of the action that you've seen on the movie, which is kind of like a, something very risky. Okay, yeah. Like they actually blow up the car, they actually kind of like a people fell down, and actually it's a lot of thing. Okay, might be some people got hurt, some people a lot of thing, and sometimes the creative what they want to be like a creator want to be do such thing, but unfortunately some people would die in that particular process too. Okay, so it is lot of thing. So it really required a kind of like a something really effort and belief and planning and everything. Okay, yeah. So the question is asked to me that key, will I be able to handle the creative risk, or will I be able to take that creative risk? um what kind of like a something creative risk that you did? Well, creative risk, like basically is this thing you kind of like a did something really very kind of like a risky for creating something. um well, I could say that ki I did it. Like in 2021, me and my friend we went to mountain, Harrier Mountain. Alright, yeah. What's a Harrier Mountain? Harrier Mountain is a kind of like a something mountain, which is kind of like a something 90-degree elevation, which is really difficult to climb. By the way, okay, very difficult. It's a very difficult means like that, na ki the entire mountain is kind of like a some this straight height. Okay, yeah, and you are not climbing by the inclined way, you are actually climbing by the straight way. Okay, yeah. And basically the steps are very crazy, like literally crazy, like it's a very crazy steps. Okay, yeah. Me and all my friend we went to there, we climbed the mountain by the way, but it's not the risk factor. Risk factor is that at that time I was actually doing the YouTube. Okay, I was still doing the YouTube by the way. Okay, yeah, but at that time I was actually doing the YouTube, and I wanted to kind of like a something make a vlog about the climbing this mountain and stuff like that. So basically is this thing, I was actually kind of like I have this mobile gimbal attached with the mobile. I was actually shooting everything with one hand mobile, and actually one hand for kind of like climbing this thing. So is it kind of like a something risky? Probably it's not that much risky, but it's like that na, ki during this process you shouldn't supposed to be hold the mobile phone and gimbal to like basically it's a life and death situation. Nah, not life and death situation, but it's just like that na, ki you have to kind of like be more precautious about that. You could use your hand, both the hand and both the leg, to kind of like a something be more protect yourself. Okay, yeah. But yeah, I kind of like a shoot everything. Okay, yeah. With this mobile phone and gimbal, is because of that ki I want to make the video and stuff like that. I make the video, yeah. The video was really good, but yeah, I think that this kind of like a something the creative risk that I did. All right, yeah, like basically yes. All right, and there are a couple of factors required to do the creative risk. Like basically, first factor is that the identify the potential risk. Yeah, you have to understand what kind of like a something potential risk required. Okay, yeah. Then evaluating the impact. Okay, yeah, like if something is actually happened bad, then what kind of like a something happened bad. Okay, you have to understand the every possible way that how this project gonna go wrong. Okay, yeah. Understand your comfort zone. Okay, yeah. If I want to willing to take a risk, then probably I have to understand that how do I supposed to take that risk. Okay, yeah. Like during the taking the risk, I shouldn't supposed to be perform as well as kind of like a something as comfortable way and as also good way. Okay, yeah. Prepare for the failure, obviously. Then seek support and feedback, definitely. And set clear goals, celebrate the bold moves. These are kind of like a something really pointer to kind of like a something willing to take the creative risk and stuff like that. By the way, these are the pointer you can't even understand until you unless you do this thing. Okay, that like basically the as a previous example that I already mentioned, which is kind of like a something represent the perfect way to represent the creative risk. Like basically, I wanted to take the photo with a man who is actually mid-air with the car. So, yeah. All right. Yes. Is it really required? Like basically, if the person, like having more creative risk is good or bad? It's not good. Okay, yeah. Like basically, this thing, creativity comes from everywhere. Okay, yeah. Like basically, if you want to be kind of like a create something or create something unique or whatever it is, okay, yeah, it doesn't really require it doesn't really meant to be that you have to do this kind of like a something risk. Like basically in like creativity comes from the very different kind of perspective. Like how you look at the world, and you have to kind of like a something show the world from your point of perspective. Okay, yeah. Like basically this thing, if you are the kind of like a something micro photographer, and you kind of like a something showcase the world is kind of like a look like from the micro point of perspective. Okay, it look really different, but it's kind of like a something very creative too. Okay, because no one was kind of like a something see this thing. If you are kind of like a something person wanted to showcase the world from kind of like a something very higher point of perspective, so what do you do is just like you have to buy the drone and basically fly the drone and you took the footage. Yeah, it's a kind of like a something is this thing. If the person who kind of like a something releases the mountain bike, okay, yeah, means like that he was kind of like a drive the bike on the mountain. So and he was kind of like a pretty experienced through this thing. So he wanted to showcase his point of perspective to the world that how he drive that particular bike on the mountain at the edge of the mountain. So this is what it is. All right, yeah. You don't really require to take a risk to implement that how much creativity that you have. No, creativity comes from the people to people. Okay, yeah. If the some people who has experience about some sort of thing, then probably they could show their creativity to this way. Okay, yeah. Now I'm gonna kind of like somebody pointed out some sort of example. Okay, yeah. There is a guy who is actually kind of like driving a bike on the edge of the mountain already. Yeah. So is it a risk for us? It's a kind of like a some risk because of that key. Like basically, who could do that? And probably if you fell down, so you would kind of like a die. But for that person who kind of like the person who kind of like a do those things, who has experience a lot about how to drive the motorcycle at the edge of the mountain. Okay, yeah. So basically for us it kind of like a feel little bit of risky, but for him point of perspective, it's not risky because he has a lot of experience through this process, so he could easily execute this thing. Okay, yeah. So it's depend upon person to person, it depend upon that key person to person, and how it's kind of like a something risk is different from person to person. All right, yeah. So yeah, this is kind of like a something is this thing. Do you get it now? So it's a kind of like a something like creative risk that I willing to take or people willing to take. All right, yeah. Would you able to take kind of like a something very enormous amount of creative risk? It depend on the situation, and does it really require me to do this thing, then I would. But if this thing doesn't really require, then I would not. Okay, yeah, because I really like safety. Okay, yeah. And yeah, so but if it really required me to do the creative risk, then I will be all that. Yeah. Next question.